So I've already talked about the first Ghostbusters. Now let's talk about Ghostbusters 2, which came out in 1989, and it is also a first-time watch for me. Yes, Ghostbusters 2 is the only Ghostbusters film that I have never seen before, so I'm watching this with fresh eyes. So let's review. So this film does take place 5 years after the events of the original film, in which everyone had moved on and the Ghostbusters was successful at first, but then they end up getting sued by New York for property damage. And so now Ghostbusters are a little bit out of business. They're doing party gigs here and there, and Dana, she moved on from Venkman and has a child now, in which that child is now being tormented or possessed by ghosts. And so the Ghostbusters get back in business and find out what is going on, and meanwhile Dana, she's getting reacquainted with Venkman. Now, as far as I know, the general consensus around Ghostbusters 2 was it is a step down from the first film, but it's still not the worst film. Again, I will get into in a later time. But after watching, one thing that people have said is that Ghostbusters 2 is essentially a metaphor for the franchise at the time, because you got to think about it. That first film was a success. Everybody loved it. They franchised the fuck out of it with toys and cartoons. And at that point, everyone was a bit nostalgic for that feeling they got doing the whole Ghostbusters craze in the 80s. And then when they got it, it's just, eh. But one thing I'll also definitely agree is that this movie is definitely watered down from the first film, because the first film, it did have some crude humor, but it never really went there because it is a movie that they want kids to enjoy. But it seems like with this movie, they made this movie solely for kids. So all the crude and adult humor that was present in the first film, it is just gone. That being said, I still think that there is some enjoyment to be had in this film. I mean, the whole beginning of this film, the way the film opened with the baby being pushed by a ghost, and that gave me mad anxiety. Anytime there's danger involving a child, that's automatically going to give me anxiety. But I also just like the progression of the characters in this film because, like I said, the Ghostbusters, they were being sued by the state because of property damage. And so now they're trying to figure out, like, how do we go forward? And then, of course, there's no ghost busting going on, because they ain't got no cases. And then the government is trying to basically shut down the Ghostbusters, saying that they're doing more harm than good, but they're really not. You know, that typical, we are not perfect, but the safest hands is still our own type story. And despite the fact that they broke up, I did like where they took Dana and Peter Venkman's relationship. And you can tell Peter Venkman, he is petty, he is on full display, but hey, that's part of human nature. You cannot bear to see someone you used to have a relationship with happy with someone else or just moving on with their lives. And I can definitely relate to that. I also like some of the courtroom stuff going on in this movie, despite the fact that they hired Rick Moranis' character to be their lawyer, which he's clearly not qualified for, but really his character in general, I just thought, is there really any reason for him to be here? I felt Ernie Hudson, he was more sidelined in this movie than he was in the first movie. Now, aside from all those negatives, I still thought Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Harold Ramis, they were on their comedic A game for this film as best they could, given the material they were given for this film. And even the effects are still up to par for this movie. But again, it's because I'm a sucker for 80s effects. And how they brought the Statue of Liberty to life in this film is beyond me, but damn it, my eyes were glued to the screen as I was watching. Just watching two giant, big green feet walking through New York City, I was like, how did they do that? In the end, Ghostbusters 2 is a mixed bag, but I still think that there is enjoyment to be had with it. And I don't think it taints the Ghostbusters name, but it did put a third Ghostbusters movie on hold for a whole bunch of years because they're just trying too hard to replicate the magic of that first film, and they just couldn't crack the code until the 2010s, where they was trying to get a new Ghostbusters film off the ground. And well, we did, but not the film we were all expecting. But we'll open up that can of worms in another video for another day. But as for Ghostbusters 2, I'm going to give it the thumbs up emoji.